All right, today we are uncapping the story of a global empire that started, believe it or not, as a nerve tonic in an Atlanta pharmacy. This is the incredible story of Coca-Cola.
So how in the world did that happen? How does a simple patent medicine become one of the most recognized brands on the entire planet? Well, it's an amazing journey, and it all starts not in some fancy boardroom, but in a local pharmacy. It's a story of pure accidental genius, some of the most brilliant marketing ever, and a rivalry that basically defined a century. Okay, let's go back to the beginning. 1886, a pharmacist in Atlanta, a guy named John Pemberton, is trying to cook up a new health drink, a nerve tonic. But then, a sudden change in local laws forces his hand, and that one little pivot, well, it changed everything.
The foundation for this brand was built with lightning speed. Seriously, in just 5 years, it went from its very first pour at a pharmacy to a fully owned business on the rise. And this was all thanks to some incredibly smart moves, like inventing the coupon. Yeah, that was a Coke thing. And a businessman named Asa Candler buying the whole formula for just $2,300. What a deal.
You heard that right. The secret ingredient that made Coca-Cola what it is today was prohibition. See, the original formula was basically an alcoholic drink, kind of like a French wine. But when Atlanta banned alcohol, Pemberton had to take it out. And that mistake, that accident, created the non-alcoholic, sugary base that became a multi-billion-dollar success.
Wild.
So how did this local tonic become this massive international symbol? Well, it wasn't just about the taste. It came down to a revolutionary bottle design, a really high-stakes contract, and, of all things, a world war. Back in the early days, everybody and their brother was trying to knock off Coca-Cola. So the company put out a challenge. Design us a bottle so unique you could recognize it just by touch, even if it was broken on the ground. The winning design became one of the most famous shapes in the world. This wasn't just a container. It was a weapon in the fight for brand identity.
Now check this out. A single, kind of flawed contract ended up shaping Coke's entire business strategy for decades. When Asa Candler sold the bottling rights for just $1, he accidentally locked the price of the syrup forever. So to stay profitable, the company couldn't raise prices. Their only move was to sell a ton of it, which is why a bottle of Coke stayed at just a nickel for over 70 years.
Then came World War II, and CEO Robert Woodruff made this legendary promise. He didn't just want to support the troops, he wanted to make Coke an essential part of the war effort. He guaranteed every GI a taste of home for a nickel, no matter what it cost the company to get it there. And he wasn't kidding. The company sent 148 of its own employees overseas. They were actually given the military rank of technical observer, which let them set up bottling plants right behind the front lines. They became known as the Coke Colonels, and they made sure Coca-Cola was as much a part of the war as Jeeps and K-rations.
But as Coke became this huge symbol of America, of the establishment, a challenger started to emerge, and this sparked one of the most famous rivalries in business history. This wasn't just about soda anymore, this was a culture war.
The battle lines were drawn, and it wasn't just about taste, it was about identity. Coke was the classic, the original, the real thing. Pepsi came in as the cool, young challenger, the choice of a new generation. It was a classic showdown, the champ versus the contender. And Pepsi just kept landing these brilliant punches. During the Great Depression, they offered twice the soda for the same price. Smart. In the 40s, they went after the African-American market that Coke was ignoring. Then, in the 70s, came the Pepsi Challenge, a blind taste test that proved, hey, people actually preferred Pepsi's sweeter taste. And by the 80s, they signed the biggest star on the planet, Michael Jackson. That move absolutely terrified the execs at Coca-Cola. All that intense pressure from Pepsi drove Coke to do two things. First, protect its most valuable asset, that secret formula. And then, in a moment of panic, to make what is probably the biggest mistake in its entire history. The whole mystique around the secret formula is just legendary. You know the story, that only two executives know the recipe and they can't fly on the same plane? Well, that's a carefully crafted myth. And it is brilliant marketing, because the secrecy of the formula has become just as famous as the drink itself. But here is the craziest part. To legally keep the word Coca in Coca-Cola, the drink has to have an element from the coca leaf. So how do they do it? Through this bizarre century-old deal with a single company in New Jersey. They legally import coca leaves, extract the narcotic for medical use, and then sell the leftover, decoconized leaves to Coca-Cola for flavoring. It's a perfectly legal and very, very strange supply chain.
So panicked by the Pepsi challenge, Coke's executives made a very rational but totally disastrous decision. They changed the formula. They made it sweeter, more like Pepsi. And you know what? It won in taste tests. But it was a catastrophic failure because they forgot one crucial thing. People weren't just drinking the liquid, they had a deep emotional connection to the real thing.
The public outcry was insane. It was immediate and overwhelming. People were hoarding cases of the old stuff. There were actual protests. And after just 79 days, the company was forced to surrender. They held a press conference and announced they were bringing back the original formula as Coca-Cola Classic. That mistake, ironically, ended up making the brand even stronger than before.
And here's the ultimate proof of that brand power. Just 3 years after this massive blunder, the world's smartest investor, Warren Buffett, plowed over $1 billion into the company. He saw that the emotional bond Coke had with its customers was basically unbreakable. He called the brand inevitable.
So after surviving its greatest test, Coke transformed. It evolved from just a soda maker into a super sophisticated, high-margin marketing and brand portfolio machine.
Today's Coca-Cola operates more like a tech company. They sold off all their bottling plants to become asset-light, so they could focus only on the super profitable part, the syrup and the marketing. Now they use their cash to buy up other brands, from coffee to juice, and they even use data from those freestyle soda machines to figure out what new flavors to launch next. It's all about brains over brawn.
And finally, let's solve a mystery that I think perfectly shows the brand's obsession with perfection. You know what I'm talking about? Why does Coca-Cola taste so much better at McDonald's?
Okay, it is not your imagination. First, McDonald's gets its syrup delivered in stainless steel tanks, not plastic bags, which keeps it way fresher. Second, they pre-chill everything, both the syrup and the water, for maximum fizz. Third, they actually use a slightly higher syrup ratio to account for the ice melting in your cup. And finally, they sell so much of it that the syrup is always factory fresh. It's a whole engineered system just for the perfect sip.
Let that number sink in for a second. 1.9 billion. That's how many Cokes are served every single day. And to think, this all started with an average of just 9 drinks sold per day in a little pharmacy back in 1886.
From a simple tonic to a global constant, the story of Coca-Cola is just a masterclass in branding, in resilience, and in the crazy power of a single secret formula. It has become a permanent part of our world. The only question is, what could possibly be next?